Hi everyone, Kate here to tell you about the books that I read in November. I did read some nonfiction, which I'm excited to tell you about, and it was a really nice reading month. I didn't get to read nearly as much nonfiction as I was hoping, but I really enjoyed what I read, so I was okay with that. And there is some nonfiction that I will just carry on into the new year, and I'm not limiting myself. I have several things on hold. So it won't just be happening in November. And looking forward to telling you about those books. The first one that I read was the first in a series called 43 Old Cemetery Road. And this is about an author who has had several bestsellers, and now he has writer's block. He's stuck. So he moves into this old house that he's heard is very isolated. He's also heard it's haunted, but he doesn't believe that. And the first one is called Dying to Meet You. And he moves into this house. And what I thought was so fun about this book is it's all told through letters and newspaper articles and telegrams, that sort of thing. And I just really enjoyed it. I loved the atmosphere of the town, and it's one I definitely want to read more in the series. I think there are 7 out in the series, and it has intergenerational friendship, which always is something that I just really love in books. And it was really a fun middle grade, so I'm excited to read more in that series. And then I read 2 in a series. Was it in November? Did I read both of them in November? Because I'm looking on my Goodreads and I can't see the reading dates, like where I am. I'm just going to tell you about both of them because I think I finished them both in November. And they're from the Mitford Murders series by Jessica Fellowes, which I just adore this series. And the first one was the Mitford Trial. And this involves some travel at sea. So I am a person, though, who likes freedom of movement in books. And anytime there's an isolated location like this, I'm not sure how it's going to go. But I trusted Jessica Fellowes, and she did not let me down, especially because not all of the book takes place on the ship. But it just does make things more high stakes. You think about it, you're stuck on this ship with the killer. And so Louisa is married at this point, and but she is still... sometimes she works for the Mitfords, sometimes not. There's special circumstances that happen. I think she's going to forever be kind of acquainted with them and helping them out of scrapes. And there is more, if you look up the Mitford sisters, the scandals that they had. So one of them is involved in a big scandal at the time, and they go on this cruise to kind of get away from things. But there are also some really kind of there's ugly foreshadowing for World War II, and just different people in power in Britain who are sympathetic to Nazis. And I appreciate that it makes it apparent how people would have been sympathetic without kind of necessarily knowing they were condoning all of the atrocities that were going to happen. So I think some people were on board without knowing kind of just how horrific the Nazi party was going to be, if that makes sense. So I appreciated that and made it feel kind of authentic to the time period. And then the next one in the series is called the Mitford, I can never remember the titles, they all blend together, the Mitford Vanishing. And this one was just as good, actually maybe not quite as good. There was some morally gray plot line at the end that I was not comfortable with. So that actually kind of knocked this down a peg. I still definitely enjoyed it, and I am really I enjoy this series. This one felt a bit anachronistic though. So the morally gray thing, I can't go into any details without giving spoilers, but this is definitely a solid historical mystery series. Even if this is one that I didn't wholeheartedly love, I still thoroughly enjoyed it. So looking forward to reading the next one, hopefully in December this month, because it's set at Christmas time. Or even I can read it in January, like Christmas. I think I still celebrate, the 12 days of Christmas they go through into the beginning of January. So anyhow, I will be reading it hopefully sooner rather than later. Okay, the next one I want to tell you about, I am so over the moon about because it's the beginning of a series. Dare I say, I think I like this series as much as Harry Potter. Now, I am saying that only based off reading the first one. So I can't know for sure, but the first one blew me away. It's called Magyk. It's by Angie Sage, and it's the first in the Septimus Heap series. So a friend that recommended this book to me, and I am so glad she did. I don't know if I would have heard about the book series otherwise. It's historical fantasy, and it just has the coziest vibes. If any of you are mystery readers and fantasy readers, and any of you are Brother Cadfael fans, I would definitely try this series. It has its medieval setting, and it just has, I can't tell you just how cozy it feels. There is magic in this world, and the magic is very kind of cute and endearing. I also think it has a sort of quirky, eccentric feel to it, and it to me is for people that love the Morrigan Crow series. I think they would really enjoy this series. The writing is just superb. I was so elated the whole time I read this that I loved it so much. Cannot wait to continue on. Peter listened to the first on audio and he loved it. The sad thing is they only had that narrator for the first book, and then they changed narrators for the rest of the series, and Peter tried listening to the second one. He's like, Mama, I can't stand that narrator. So he's willing to read them physically. And I am just, I can't tell you how good this was. And it all kicks off when there is a queen who gives birth to a baby girl. So the princess is born. And on the same night, there is a much lower ranking family, and they give birth to a baby boy. And the mother passes out right after giving birth. And when she wakes up, the midwife says, your son passed away. So I took him away. He's being buried. And so the mother has to grieve the loss of this baby that she didn't really get to see. And at the same time, then a baby girl is brought to this family in the middle of the night, and they say you have to keep her safe. They aren't told her identity. You can maybe guess. And then the rest of the plot takes place like 13 years later. So enjoyable. I loved all the twists and turns, but like I said, also the coziness of it just combined it to be this perfect, beautiful, beautiful book. So the next book is called Flight. And I think there's going to be some magic school kind of setup for it. And I'm very excited about that. It's interesting because in this book, it's like the witches aren't in hiding at first, and then magic becomes illegal. And I think there's court politics at play. And so I think whoever is the reigning leader has a say whether or not magic will be legal or illegal. So I cannot wait to read Flight. Cannot wait. I'm going to be reading it very beginning of the year. I wanted to get through my Christmassy reads first, but I will be reading Flight sooner rather than later. Okay, then the next one, and a book that I have kind of mixed feelings about, and that is Agatha Christie, An Elusive Woman, a very elusive woman, by Lucy Worsley. Let me start out by saying Lucy Worsley's writing is stellar. She has this quality in nonfiction that makes you are unbelievably compelled to keep turning the pages. And I love that about her writing. I really enjoyed getting to learn about Agatha Christie, getting to learn about her life, getting to learn more about the days that she disappeared. And I feel like from the writing that she did on it later, and I feel like we really kind of know. It doesn't seem like a mystery to me, the way that Lucy Worsley wrote about it. And so that was really interesting to learn a lot about it, and just to see how harshly the media looked on her from that incident. And I was very sympathetic to her because of that. So my hesitation with this book is I wish that Lucy Worsley inserted herself less in the book. She has these smug asides that she puts. And it's like she's oblivious that anybody who might think differently than her reads her books. Like, oh, those kinds of people, they don't read my books. So first of all, she has a statement, there's no such thing as a bad mother, which if somebody today were to say there's no such thing as a bad father, people would come out with their pitchforks. Like, that's just, it's outrageous to me to say there's no such thing as a bad mother. It's just weird. It's weird to make a statement like that. And then the second one was that viewing marriage as a lifelong monogamous commitment is a very modern and limited view of marriage. And one, I don't know where she's getting that it's modern, because the institution of marriage, that's the deal, you know, it's exclusive, you know, and that historically, that's how it's been viewed. I'm not talking about now, but historically it was viewed as very exclusive. And then also she says, what is the other thing that, and to say that it's a limited view, like to you, that's limited. I mean, maybe it is kind of, it's unwritten that it's in her opinion, because it's her book that she's writing, but the tone that she has, it's this kind of superior, smug tone, like, aren't I smarter than the masses? And here, I'm going to add, you know, kind of these asides to make that clear. So yeah, what am I trying to say? Like, I did enjoy it, but that kind of bothered me. So those are my mixed thoughts on Agatha Christie and A Very Elusive Woman. Everything that I learned about Agatha Christie, I really enjoyed. Just maybe not the other stuff that I spoke about. The next book that I'd like to talk about is Changes at Fairacre by Miss Reed. This is the 10th in her Fairacre series, and I will be honest that for a few of the books, it was starting to feel a little bit stale, like kind of samey. But this book switched things up, and it just gave some freshness and kind of newness that the series really needed. So I went in and I was like, oh boy, this is just going to feel kind of like a repeat of other things, and then an event happens, and it gave the story kind of the energy that it needed. So I really enjoyed this one. I love the little town of Fairacre and kind of the cast of characters that you get to see in each one. Lots of domestic vibes. So really enjoyed that one. The next one was a buddy read with Kate from the novel Nomad. And it is Dangerous to Know by Tasha Alexander. This is the 5th in the Lady Emily series. I really enjoyed this one, and I was very happy to enjoy this one because the previous one, the 4th in the series, I did not enjoy. And I thought, oh no, do I not like this series? But it just happened to be a fluke. I'm so glad we read this one. It takes place in Normandy. And Emily, again, wherever she goes, there is death, you know? So it was really enjoyable. And I just really, really like this series. And it's just so fun and pacey and just full of compelling conversations. And it's a great historical mystery series. The next one that I read, well, I'll tell you about 2 that I read. And I'm looking, and Goodreads has entered it twice in my reading challenge. It really bothers me. I think anytime I do a reread, Goodreads does that. Really bugs me. So anyhow, The Labors of Hercules Beal by Gary Schmidt. And then I reread for the Kindred Spirits Club, The Wednesday Wars. These books, oh my goodness. So The Labors of Hercules Beal, I think I like as much as The Wednesday Wars. And I read it earlier this year and was already ready for a reread of it. And I did the reread via audiobook, loved the narrator, really enjoyed this. And there were certain parts of the plot that didn't quite sink in for me the first time I read it. So it was such a rewarding experience the second time around to go like fully process kind of the things that had happened. And I love any book that can make me laugh and cry in equal parts, and The Labors of Hercules Beal did that. I love the setting of it too, being on Cape Cod, and it feels very much like the setting is a big part of the story. And then I reread The Wednesday Wars. I got my husband to read this for the first time. He said it was a great book when he finished. I loved hearing him laugh out loud as he read it. He really enjoyed it, so it was great to get to see him enjoy and fall in love with this book too. And I cannot wait to discuss this with people on Saturday. I don't know when this is going up, but that's when, at the time of filming, we haven't yet discussed it. It's such an excellent book. Hollinghood is the main character, and you follow him throughout a school year. And the relationship that he has with a very challenging teacher, but you get to see kind of the layers that she has as the school year goes on. So excellent. Oh, they're some of my all-time favorite books now. Okay, then the next one that I read was part of the Worst Witch series, and it was The Worst Witch and the Wishing Star. I adore this series. It is so charming and is just it makes for such rewarding reading. I love it so much. I was thinking of the Myrtle Hardcastle mystery series. This is Mildred Hubble. and all the scrapes that she gets into. And in this one, she happens upon a stray dog, and of course wants to take him in. Yeah, so it was just delightful. Then the next one, I'm trying to find the next one that I read. I thought it was right there, but I'll put a picture, was The Lilies of the Field by William Edmund Barrett. This one had been recommended to me many times, and I came out feeling so about it. The writing to me was really utilitarian. Just nothing at all that he could have made it more. It just felt very bare bones. The story itself I liked, but the writing just was so bare bones that I kind of didn't quite fall in love with it like I was hoping to. I love the notion of the plot where there are these nuns in the middle of nowhere and they want to build this church. They have no idea how it's going to happen, and they meet a stranger and they kind of rope him into their plan. So it was enjoyable. I just didn't fall in love with it. The next one was another reread, and that was A Fatal Grace by Louise Penny. I have decided to reread through this series. I have so many mystery series I want to get to, but I was just craving this series, and I'm not yet ready to run out of new ones. And so I thought, let me just jump back. I really enjoyed revisiting this one. There were certain elements of the plot that I had forgotten, but The Village of Three Pines, it just has so much appeal for anyone that reads these books, and I really loved it. Yeah, it was so enjoyable. Okay, then High Rising by Angela Thirkell. This was a buddy read with some friends, and we had so much fun reading this story. I had forgotten how delightful Angela Thirkell's writing is. I really just was able to settle in and savor the richness in her writing and this delightful story. I loved it so much, and it was just so delightful. It's about a single mother. She's a widow, and she has several grown children, but one school-age son, and taking him home for the Christmas holidays. So it does have some Christmassy elements, but also it goes on far past that. And so I like that it feels Christmas-ish. And so it's one of those ones that not really when you're ready to do full-on Christmas reading, I think it's a solid one. But it feels very, I mean, they're named at the Barsetshire series. They're named after Anthony Trollope's Barset Chronicles. And it's for a reason. Just the way the relationships are, the plot felt very akin to Trollope. So thoroughly enjoyed that reread, and I had forgotten just how much I loved it. Okay, another nonfiction November read that just blew me away was A London Child of the 1870s by Molly Hughes. I absolutely love this. I'm so glad that Mitzi from Mitzi Reads and Writes gave me the final push to pick this up. I just love her writing style. It was so conversational, and she looks back with such fondness on her life, even when you can just tell she's very nostalgic about her childhood, and she had to, put it in book form. They're taken from her journals, but she looked back and then wrote it like a story, like a sequential story. There's some really sad things that happen in here, but there are also some really funny things, and you come to love her family so much. I wish I had annotated more in the books. I didn't end up annotating that much, and there were some really just interesting anecdotes and interesting happenings. And I love this. To me, is so evocative of childhood. She says, I had overslept for once and was frantic at having missed an hour of life. Isn't that the way you are when you're a child? You are so excited about kind of each and every day and getting up and the adventures that you'll go on. When you're an adult, you're like, oh, it's more of the same on some mornings. Some mornings I do feel excited, but that to me is just so evocative of childhood. This was such a funny little detail to me. There was a lifelong feud between two of my aunts because on one occasion the apple cakes had been salted instead of sugared, and each one declared it was the other who had done it. Doesn't that seem like something that would happen in real life? It was interesting too. She had her father's side of the family who lived locally and were much more stern, and then her mother's side of the family who lived in Cornwall, and they would go on trips to visit them, and she felt much more at home with them. But yeah, the naughtiness that she gets up to. And my friend Elizabeth said this reminded her of the Bastables from E. Nesbit's The Would-Be Goods and The Story of the Treasure Seekers. And I completely agreed. So yes, this was highly, highly enjoyable. So those are the books that I read in November. Like I said, not nearly as much nonfiction. Oh, but I did want to mention, Shelly and I started The Life of Charlotte Bronte, and we are both struggling with this. So we both agreed, let's take December off. I want to be completely self-indulgent with the December reading that I do, and I feel totally fine with that. So yes, we're taking the month off. I made it through the first volume and 144 pages. So I don't know. It feels very challenging. I'm not loving it. And I realized after reading the Brontes, like, I'm not wild about Charlotte Bronte as a person. And so then I'm like, oh, well, I said I wanted to read this. But I do want to read everything by Gaskell. So I will just take my time through it. I haven't given up on it. We will continue more in the new year. Okay, that's all the books that I read in November. Thank you as always for watching and for leaving comments, and I will be back with another video soon. Bye!